Welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're looking at a completely unprecedented social experiment, one that pushes human endurance, strategy, and psychology to the absolute limit. We're diving straight into the raw source material to see exactly what happens when humans are stripped of all their comforts in a wilderness survival challenge on a scale that is, honestly, just staggering. Because it all boils down to this incredibly fascinating question. What actually happens when you take 50 hardened survival experts, the kind of people who literally suffer in the woods for fun, and pit them against 50 complete amateurs who think roughing it means a hotel without room service? That's the core premise we're exploring today, a head-to-head battle of raw, honed skills versus purchased artificial resources. To really grasp the scale here, you've got to picture this starting line. Exactly 100 people stranded right in the middle of the deep wilderness. They're divided straight down the middle. 50 in blue are experts. 50 in red are amateurs. Just imagining the sheer chaos of 100 strangers clashing in a survival setting is wild enough, let alone watching them try to outlast one another. And hey, they aren't just out there for bragging rights. The stakes are incredibly high. We're talking a prize pool of $250,000 on the line. The rules? Brutally simple. Whichever team has the most people left when help finally arrives gets to split that $250,000 prize. So every single person who taps out and goes home means fewer people to share the money with at the end, sure. But it also weakens the team's overall chances of actually winning the whole shebang. Okay, let's dive into this setup because the contrast is absolutely staggering. Right before drop-off, the red team was handed a huge advantage. They actually got to go on a shopping spree to buy whatever they thought they needed. And what did they show up with? Kid-sized tents, giant 24 packs of bottled water, lighters, and party mix snacks. Yeah. Meanwhile, the blue team of experts, they had no idea what specific climate they were even packing for. They arrived with completely generic gear, having to rely entirely on their decades of combined experience. They immediately got to work building these complex debris shelters with 1-foot-thick leaf roofs just to get some insulation. Act 1, hubris and humility. Let's get into it. So when the sun went down on that very first night, the woods quickly handed out a heavy dose of humility. But it didn't land where you might expect. Look at this quote from a resourced amateur on the red team on day 1. They felt completely invincible. They had their store-bought tents, their snacks, and this deeply misplaced sense of security. They were basically treating it like a summer camp sleepover, convinced they could effortlessly ride out the challenge, quote, till Christmas, unquote, just because they had some bottled water. This kind of hubris is a classic psychological trap in survival situations. Now, as the days progressed, you can really see how the woods systematically dismantled both teams. As you can see on this timeline, it wasn't a static challenge at all. It was a brutal escalation of hurdles. They shifted from the immediate shock of the cold on day 1 to the slow burn of starvation around day 4, and finally to the devastating impacts of severe weather and intense psychological warfare. And right off the bat, here is the immediate, shocking plot twist of the whole experiment. The very first 2 people to shoot off their flares and quit, they were not the overconfident amateurs. Nope, they were survival experts from the blue team. The harsh reality was that sleeping directly on the freezing wet ground without the luxury of store-bought sleeping bags was just too much. In fact, one of those initial tap-outs was a 66-year-old expert with a double knee replacement. You see, the woods literally don't care about your resume. They only care about your physical limits. Moving on to Act 2, the great equalizers. As that initial shock wore off, the teams met the 2 great equalizers: lack of food and unpredictable weather. And this brilliantly illustrates where the artificial advantages of the red team began to aggressively evaporate. I mean, the red team completely devoured their store-bought party mix in the first 45 minutes of the challenge. And when they tried to use their purchased fishing gear, they literally just reeled in trash. They were instantly starving. The blue team, however, managed to turn the forest into a grocery store. They located hidden caches of beets and apples, rationed them properly, and used their wilderness knowledge to weave functional fish traps right out of sticks. But man, the harsh reality of that starvation sets in incredibly fast. As this quote shows, by day 4, the red team is out there dreaming of Waffle House buffets and milkshakes. Their energy completely plummets. They are miserable, they're suffering from severe headaches, and this immediate crushing hunger ends up costing the red team their first 6 eliminations in rapid succession. Turns out, their store-bought advantage couldn't buy them a sustainable food source. But hey, If the hunger didn't break them, the sky certainly tried. A relentless 5-hour rainstorm rolled through, followed by a night so cold that frost literally covered the leaves. The red team's camp, which they poorly chose to set up on a decline, completely flooded. Their fire pit washed away, all their shoes were soaked. Meanwhile, the blue team's painstakingly engineered debris shelters, which they jokingly started calling the Airbnb beast, functioned perfectly. Those thick leaves kept them dry and insulated, so the weather violently shifted the advantage right back to the experts. Act 3. The psychology of survival. As the physical challenge gives way to internal mental warfare, you'd probably think the blue team would be cruising, right? Well, actually, scratch that. They fundamentally broke down from the inside. Think about it. You have 50 Type A survivalist control freaks, and every single one of them thinks their way is the absolute only right way to do things. They clashed bitterly over how to ration apples. Paranoia skyrocketed when they discovered a secret stash of potatoes hoarded in a shed by teammates who had already quit. They even tried a morning drum circle to boost morale, which, surprise, surprise, completely failed and just annoyed everyone further. Despite their vastly superior skills, the simple inability to trust one another led to a huge wave of self-eliminations. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is a diabolical test introduced halfway through. Both teams were handed 50 cans of food. We're talking beef, peas, corn. The catch? Whichever team returns the most unopened cans after 72 hours wins a huge reward. But if they tie, neither team gets anything at all. It is the ultimate prisoner's dilemma for starving people. Do you eat to survive right now, or do you starve to win the reward later? The results here are just astonishing. Both teams, pushed to the absolute brink of starvation, suffering from sleep deprivation and freezing temperatures, chose to endure the agonizing 72 hours without opening a single can. The blue team returned 50, the red team returned 50. And because it was a perfect tie, neither team received any reward whatsoever. All that suffering was literally for nothing. The psychological fallout from that was immediate, and it was brutal. Just imagine starving for 3 days straight, staring at cans of beef, only to be told your intense discipline earned you absolutely nothing. It was a complete gut punch. The loss of morale was so absolute that 3 members of the red team just threw their hands up, lit their flares, and quit the experiment immediately on the spot. At this point, the game design itself became a harsher enemy than the actual wilderness. And you know what? This psychological torture escalated even further on day 14 with the box challenge. The game theory introduced here is fascinating. 2 identical sets of boxes are placed in front of both teams. You open one box at a time. The first team to smash their button gets the item inside, but the other team gets nothing. However, if both teams have the discipline to reject the item, the next box is revealed. And if they reject all of them, they both get everything. It's a pure test of greed versus collective patience. So let's look at how this played out. Box 1, fishing gear. Both teams stubbornly pass. Box 2, cast iron pots and pans. Again, both teams hold the line and reject it, either terrified the other team might win out or hoping to hold out to get all the items at the end. They easily pass on Box 4's building supplies, mostly because they've already built their shelters. But it was Box 3 that almost shattered them completely. Box 3 revealed a massive mountain of peanut butter cups. For people who have been eating nothing but foraged beets and an occasional piece of fruit for 2 solid weeks, showing them rich milk chocolate and peanut butter is, as one contestant screamed, cruel, their mouths were literally salivating. Teams had to actively, physically restrain their own members from smashing the button. The sheer willpower required to reject that box and close the lid on all those calories is honestly hard to even comprehend. So the crucial point is this. We started out asking if amateurs with resources could beat experts with skills. But the source material proves the wilderness strips away both of those advantages. Resources run out, and skills can't fix paranoia. When the rain is pouring and you are starving, the only thing that keeps a flare unlit is the people around you. It leaves us with a profound question. When pushed to the absolute breaking point, what is truly more valuable? What you have in your bag, what you have in your head, or simply the ability to trust the team standing beside you? Think about that next time you go camping. Thanks for joining me on this Explainers, and I'll see you next time.